In a world gone mad, only rationality and common sense can save it. It's Andrew and Jerry Save the World with your hosts, Andrew Langer and Jerry Rogers. And now, here's Andrew and Jerry.
Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Andrew and Jerry Save the World, episode 32. Andrew and Jerry Get Classified. I'm Andrew Langer.
Jerry Rogers.
And listen, we've got an action-packed show today. We're going to be joined in a little bit by Tony Shaffer, president of the London Center. I believe, Jerry, that Tony is our first return guest. Am I right here or am I wrong?
You might be correct.
I think
although 32 shows, they blend together. And also, prior to this, we've done how many shows prior to this?
Well, I mean, right. We did, I think, 150 Langer casts beforehand. Right. But yes, we'd brought people back lots of times. We had Michi Ilyazi as the permanent guest, our third chair for a very long time.
We got to get him back.
Michi has moved on into he's in the stratosphere of the advocacy world. So
he is, yes.
He is not. It's not that Michi doesn't want to come on with us. It's that his new jobs prevent him from doing so. We're gonna have Tony Shaffer because we got to talk about this Mar-A-Lago raid and what's going on. Team Trump is back in court today with this. Lots of confusion, and we're hoping that Tony can help simplify things. Interestingly enough, Jerry, I was in New York over the weekend. I had a lovely, went to a family barbecue, and I have a cousin who is working in political things. I'm very excited. Found out that my cousin Billy is running for advisory neighborhood council or commission in Washington, D.C., which is all good. He is also moving up into the stratosphere of advocacy in D.C.
Excellent.
The former Hill staffer.
Running for something that I've never heard of.
Well, yeah, but I mean, okay. But you and I have never lived in D.C., so it's I think the equivalent of.
But it's not a councilman.
Well, no, but I think it's one step below councilman.
And do they have meetings?
Yes, of course they do. And
do they get paid?
I think they get paid a nominal salary, and then they do get to influence policy.
How?
They make recommendations to the council.
I can make recommendations to the council.
Yes, but they're elected to do this.
Whatever.
I
think we need less politicians, less elected officials, less bureaucracies, less councils.
But something. Listen,
let people govern themselves.
Particularly, well, okay. Wait a minute. Do you think? Well, okay. This would be a good debate to have. Would DC be better off if more people could govern themselves in DC?
Of course.
Really? You with all of your adherence to ordered liberty, you still.
Well, I mean, ordered liberty, right? I mean, in the old days, my father told me stories about how, Arthur Avenue, for instance. The first time I ever went to Arthur Avenue, my father made a point to say, "Hey, kid, you see that guy in the corner in the Adidas jumpsuit? Hey, kid, you see that guy with the Puma jacket on? Yeah, Pop. Notice how there are no police around here? Guess what? You could strap wads of cash around your body and walk around this neighborhood. No one's going to bother you. Why? Because the neighborhood took care of itself.
Well, the neighborhood took care of itself, but Jerry, also part of that was also because you had the citizenry paying protection money to the various people. I get this. I understand where you're going with this. By the way, finally finished watching The Irishman. It was absolutely fantastic. Enjoyed it. Though, interestingly enough, real quick, I guess I could talk about this now as opposed to at the end of the show. So I also watched The Offer, which you haven't seen yet, I don't think, which is about the making of The Godfather.
It yet, no. Right.
And so one of the points, and this is not a spoiler here because this is all supposed to be based on true stories. So in The Irishman, they make it out that Frank Sheeran, the Irishman, is the person who killed Crazy Joe Gallo and Umberto's Clam Bar in Little Italy as sort of retribution for the shooting of Joe Colombo in Columbus Circle. Whereas the Offer makes it out that it was two soldati in the Colombo crime family who killed Crazy Joe Gallo as opposed to Frank Sheeran. It's really interesting stuff. Sort of two things sort of coming out roughly contemporaneously, and I'm sure the truth is somewhere in the middle. I didn't realize. Here's the thing that I didn't realize, Jerry. I didn't realize that Jimmy Hoffa was from Indiana.
Neither did I.
Yes, there you go. So, all right.
I know this. I know what I did like about The Irishman, by the way, was this that scene, that hit scene that you mentioned. That's how hits happen. They're not stylized. You know, we watch movies and assassinations and hits are drama. No. You go up to someone and they don't even know what's happening, and you pop them, you drop the gun, you walk away. So many instances, people don't even know who did it.
Yeah, and I think in The Irishman, the hit on Sally Bugs, which is outside of the Andrea Doria Social Club in Little Italy, that's really accurate in that regard.
And even the fictionalized murder of Jimmy Hoffa, how that happened.
Yes.
It was just bam, boom, done.
Yes.
I mean, right? Did you, it just happened.
No. I mean, I'm inclined to, I mean, it's like the scene in Donnie Brasco, where they knock off Bruno Kirby while they're knocking off everybody else, right? They go after, it's either, I think it's Sonny Red that they hit, in Sonny Red's garage, and then they ice Bruno Kirby at the same time. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Not that we want to go down this rabbit hole, because there is so much.
But the broader question though kind of fits into where we're going to go with the show in terms of classified information, the raid on Mar-a-Lago. The problem in terms of why the Trump FBI raid is so confusing, besides the fact that there are pro-Trumpers, anti-Trumpers, and Trump has broke our collective mind. But it's also that this issue, and we'll ask Tony later, the FBI, the DOJ, the feds could just charge you with anything.
Yes.
There are so many laws.
Right.
I went back and forth on Twitter yesterday, and I asked this question about the Presidential Records Act. And again, we can ask Tony this, but there was a very clear, very good article, op-ed at the Wall Street Journal explaining how the Presidential Records Act allows a former president access to his or her papers, White House papers, presidential papers, including having them in their possession, and how you transfer these documents to the government, because the government owns the documents because of post Watergate reforms, is a negotiation, right? And so my understanding is, Trump is 19 months negotiating with the feds. I don't understand the urgency. I don't understand what law's broken. Andy McCarthy has a good piece yesterday in the New York Post where he says that the president's in the clear. He didn't break any laws vis-a-vis classified documents, vis-a-vis having these documents in his possession. He said, but however, now it looks like when you look at these court filings and how the feds respond, is that they're going to charge him with obstruction.
Yes.
And again, this is one of those things where you don't break a law. The government comes in and accuses you of breaking a law. You push back and fight the government, and then the government then charges you with obstruction.
It's one of those things. One of the questions that I want to ask Tony is about, I have a feeling they're also going to charge him with improper storage of these documents. I know that sounds very strange, but again, it's just, the federal law is so large, and it has such great breadth that you can sort of get charged with anything.
You just make up, and again, just and as a reminder to our audience, we talked about this our last show. The Department of Justice was weaponized during the Obama years when he used the DOJ to go after Chris Christie. Remember Bridgegate, right. And Chris Christie, of course, let his underlings take the blame for it. But the Supreme Court years later threw the case out because rightly said that the federal law applied in this instance was inappropriate.
Right.
And again, this is what the feds do.
Listen, in the same way, right? That the weaponized against Bob McDonnell, the governor of Virginia. Nobody talks about this at all.
Right.
Remember, the governor of Virginia was indicted and convicted, and later had that conviction overturned because the federal government could never prove that there was a quid pro quo. Right. He certainly received this largesse, or his wife received this largesse.
What did he get, a watch?
No. There was a vacation property, and maybe there was a watch in there. There were a couple of other things that his wife got. I think his wife got clothes. But the point of a quid pro quo, and I've mentioned this before, and the Supreme Court has upheld this, right? Is there has to be something. Anyway, the point is Bob McDonnell's life was largely ruined for this. And this is the point.
And also remember this, he was also someone who the Obamas feared.
That's exactly right. This is point A, is that we're talking about the weaponization of the Obama FBI. Remember, up until all of this happened, Bob McDonnell was on a very short list to run against Barack Obama in 2012.
And so was Chris Christie.
And so, you have this, and, we talk about I used to keep a running list. In fact, those two things weren't even on the running list at the time, of what I call the slouching towards fascism list, where all of the things that the Obama administration was doing to sort of put us on this march to fascism. But this is the underlying point here, Jerry, and again, something we're going to get into with Tony. This is not about convicting Donald Trump, right? If they convict Donald Trump, that's gravy. That's a bonus. That's a lulu. But it's not about convicting Donald Trump. It's about muddying the waters. It's about first of all, sucking all the oxygen out of any kind of discussion about the failures of the Biden administration, right? About focusing on the issues that are facing working families, and instead focusing on, should Donald Trump be convicted? Should Donald Trump be able to put his name on the ballot? If Donald Trump doesn't run, right, then it becomes who supported Donald Trump? Who didn't speak enough ill of Donald Trump, right? And again,
it's a great mechanism to
it's brilliant.
Create division in the Republican Party.
I've got a lengthy clip. I don't think I'm going to play it now, but I should play it later on in the show. Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, she gave a press conference yesterday. The president, by the way, another part of this, the president is speaking tonight in Philadelphia, and what most folks are saying is going to be an overly political speech, which gives rise to the question of whether or not why the major media networks are carrying it.
Given also, right, what he has said just recently, his speech earlier this week was incoherent. It was bizarre.
But my point is that they are setting up this whole idea of that there are the whole class of politicians who are completely unacceptable. So yesterday, for the first time, I don't think it's ever been done, and my listeners can point out if I'm wrong here, but Karine Jean-Pierre yesterday was asked about ultra MAGA Republicans, and she turned around.
She was asked about MAGA voters.
No. But my point is that she was also asked about ultra MAGA Republicans, and she turned around and named specific Republicans that she said were a threat to democracy. Paul Gosar, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Madison Cawthorn, and I don't know who the fourth one was, but the fifth one was Ron DeSantis.
Wow.
And
there you go.
Yes.
There you go. I mean, we talked about this. How the left accusing the right of fascism and what they're doing themselves is fascism, is implementing fascism and voter suppression and threats to democracy. They're undermining the legitimacy of our institutions. Just last week, Jamie Raskin, who is a Democratic congressman from Maryland, very outspoken. He's on the TV talk shows. He's having his 15 minutes of fame because of the January 6th committee. He came out and said that the Supreme Court, he called it the Trumpicized. Am I saying that right? Or the Trumpetization of
either way.
Well, regardless, he essentially talked about how the Supreme Court should be ignored. It is illegitimate. And think about how scary that is.
Right.
And again, this isn't just some fringe. These are the mainstream congressional. These are committee chairmen. These are leaders in the party. This is the spokesperson for the White House. And mind you, I didn't hear her name specific elected Republicans. Again, mind you, elected Republicans. These are members of Congress who are elected. But worse than that, I think, Andrew, is she said that MAGA voters are a threat to democracy. Voters. Think about that for a second. Voters are a threat to democracy.
Yeah,
that is the position of this White House.
You know something, I was going to pull it up because I did find, I'll find it in a minute. It's one of those things where, again, I used to say that the Obama administration was the max power administration. Like they would do everything wrong, the wrong way to do things, but they just do it faster. This is the acceleration of everything that the Obama administration created. You know, what the Biden administration is doing in terms of creating the issue of the other, right? These people are extreme, right? It's not just that they're MAGA, they're ultra MAGA. And all of the rhetoric that's being used is the same rhetoric that was being used, you know, from 2009 onward to describe the Tea Party. And it effectively, you know, it helped to effectively destroy that movement, right? There are other factors that helped hasten the Tea Party movement's demise, but the White House and the executive branch attacking them specifically and calling them extreme, right? I don't know if you remember, and I'll say it though, I'm reluctant to say it. I had a conversation way back when, at the beginning of the Tea Party movement, about the left using the pejorative teabaggers.
Yeah.
Which I found offensive for a whole host of reasons, not the least of which is,
and they thought they were so clever and so witty, so cute.
Well, it really is about the other, about creating the other. Oh well, they're teabaggers, they're other people, they're ultra MAGA, they're maggots, right? Which is the whole thing. Sure. I finally had to sound it out when I saw someone write MAGA T, MAGAT. Oh, they're saying maggots. Or Trumpsters or trumpeters or whatever.
Yeah.
It's creating the issue of the other. You know, anyway, I don't know why I would use the phrase Bidenites, but you know, that's what it is. Sorry, go ahead, Jerry.
But again, what's frightening about this is that you would hope that the media would hold these elected officials, these spokespersons, these leaders of the Democratic Party on the left, hold them accountable to what they say. Joe Biden went on a rant earlier this week on guns, and everything out of his mouth was incorrect or a direct lie. Everything, not some of the things, everything. He said things like, you know, you can't purchase a semi-automatic rifle or a cannon.
Yeah, you can't purchase a machine gun. You can't purchase a tank.
You know, I mean, everything, untruths. And then, you know, the irony is that he says that these, you know, the Second Amendment, how are you going to defend yourself against a tyrannical government? You know, we have F-15s.
Yeah.
Never mind the fact that he's actually playing in his mind the idea of unleashing F-15s on American citizens. But then it begs the question, okay, well, then why ban the AR-15 then?
Yes.
If the AR-15 is so useless, then why ban it?
Right. Then it's clearly not a weapon. It's clearly not a weapon of war. As
he's talking, he's contradicting himself. And the scary thing is that this is a man who's been in Washington for half a century.
Yeah.
You'd think he'd be familiar with the Constitution, our history, our laws, our traditions, our ideals, and all the rest of it. He loves to say things like, you know, we're Americans. Hey, I mean it.
Hey, man.
Hey, man, I mean it, Jack. Hey, I mean it. We're Americans. But he has no idea. We're Americans, but this man literally uses language of hate versus half.
You know something here. I was
of America.
I pulled up. I didn't play the Karine Jean-Pierre clip. Because I know we're going to bring our guest on a second. I want to say something else. Biden went on a really strange in that strange rambling speech in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. He went on an extended riff about basketball players and the east side of Wilmington or wherever it was.
Very strange race rift. You're right.
It was one of those things where I sat there and I said, well, what is he going to say next? Is he going to say next? Anyway, I don't want to say essentially talking about the foods at the snack bar, I thought he was going to go down this road and talk about specific foods that are used to racially stereotype people of color. It was so bizarre. And I say this, it's funny because you said you got into it with people on Twitter yesterday. I have strenuously avoided it in the last couple of days.
Right.
There's a political science professor at UMBC that I've gone back and forth with about stuff. And he said some particularly stupid things in the last couple of days. One of them having to do with, I guess, some professor who got an email and some racist email, and he says, "Oh, I'll give you two guesses as to who this person voted for in 2020." And I'm thinking, I was almost ready to write back, "Oh, you mean the guy who goes on and says these racist things now?"
Right.
Who talks.
The funny thing is Joe Biden has a history of saying racist might be the wrong term, certainly racialist.
Yes,
he is someone where his thinking on race, his observations about race are different than ours.
And Jerry, hold on, they're different in a way where, right, we know that the definition of racism has changed since you and I were kids. Right, racism used to be bigotry. Right, you hated somebody or you had antipathy towards somebody because of their race. That's what we were taught in the 1970s and into the 1980s, and then things changed. With Joe Biden has an even further back viewpoint of this, where he believes it's okay to talk about these racial stereotypes, as and thinks that it's I don't know, it's perfectly okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Again, and hearing the president of the United States talk, it sounds like he's patting himself on the back because he hung out with Americans of African ancestry.
Yes,
I grew up in the Bronx in my early years, and our neighborhood was predominantly African American and Dominican and Puerto Rican. I never thought. I never say I've been on the radio for years now. Our podcasts, I write, I give talks and speeches. I've never congratulated myself. Hey, my neighbors.
Do you think it's interesting you say that, because we used to be taught that you had to view things, the world is colorblind. You judge people by the content of their character. Do you think Joe Biden feels like he can say these things now because the definition of racism has changed? Right, because he acknowledges that racism is about institutional structures and about power and about class.
You're giving him too much credit.
I know I am, Jerry. I know I am. I'm just sort of saying this as an illustrative.
But let me tell you what it is, though. And again, I don't have the name of the book on the tip of my tongue, but there is a new book coming out, and it talks about the Barack Obama, Joe Biden relationship, and how in 2012, Barack Obama very seriously considered dropping Uncle Joe from the ticket, and how this idea of them having a bromance was false history.
Oh yeah, no.
But here's the telling part about that is there are quotes. People attribute quotes to Joe Biden in this book where he didn't have respect for Obama.
Sure.
And again, part of me.
Well, remember, he's clean and he speaks English well.
Again, I can't help but think, I don't think Joe Biden in his heart of hearts is a racist, but I do think based upon his own comments, I think he holds some kind of racial
interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, let's leave it there. Let's bring on our guest. His name is Tony Shaffer, and now it's time for expert advice.
Expert advice.
Well, welcome to our expert advice segment. This is a special one for us because I believe he is our first return guest. He is the president of the London Center for Public Policy. He is a retired lieutenant colonel from the United States Army. He is going to help us noodle through everything that's going on with Trump and classified material and what happened with the raid at Mar-A-Lago. His name is Tony Shaffer. Tony, so glad you can join us. We were talking just before we started recording. There's a lot to noodle through here, but that's the intent, isn't it, right? It's to keep us all confused as to what's going on.
It is, Andrew. I'm sorry, I was deceived. I thought we were going to talk about psoriasis, giving advice on psoriasis. I feel completely misled here. So
I've been there.
This was done. I was talking to a mainstream media person the other day, and we were talking about the fact that the 6th January committee has nothing. It's going to go nowhere. So to me, this is the fail safe. This is like, yeah, we kind of got this and we don't really want to use it because it sucks, but it's all we got. So they don't have the 6th January distraction, although Biden keeps trying to bring it back and all this. Not going to happen. It's nothing there. So, and they can't apparently manufacture anything. This, on the other hand, has all sorts of potential for manufacturing, manipulation, lying, everything else. So this is the replacement for the 6th January thing, and it's being done right now. So this will run up. The timing is so that this thing hits its peak probably late September, early October for people that kind of remember. So that's why they're doing it now, and that's where it's going.
You know, it's interesting. Before you came on, Tony, Andrew and I were talking about how, again, the January 6th committee has burnt out. I mean, they've made all these promises. We have evidence of members of Congress colluding and organizing and doing these pre-planned reconnaissance, and nothing from that. We've been promised all kinds of evidence. Again, very similar to the Russia hoax, where, you know, Adam Schiff, we have all this evidence never to be presented. But here's the thing, Andrew and I were talking about this, and I'll ask you this. So my understanding of the Presidential Records Act is that a former president, he or she is by law allowed access to White House papers, presidential papers, including meaning in their possession. And these can be classified or non-classified material. And so the very fact that he has this material isn't illegal. And so again, they were negotiating 19 months of negotiating. The PRA, the Presidential Records Act, says how you transfer is negotiated. And so I said to Andrew, I'm going to ask you this, but now Andrew McCarthy had a good piece yesterday in the New York Post, or this week in the New York Post. And so now he's saying that it's going to be obstruction. But to your point, obstruction is whatever the government says it is.
You can't obstruct when you break rules that you decide what the rules are. And that's what they're trying to do. So, and beyond that, Jerry, one of the key things is that the Records Act also allows presidents to determine what is personal and what is official. So game over right there. It's like, that's what the law says. The law says the president determines that, and then that's game over. And then anything the president touches that is classified is either declassified or retained for purposes of his own records. Because as a former president, he has the right to that information. There's any number of reasons that a former president has that. Now, in the past, Jerry, let me be very clear on this. It's been a boys' club, and nobody outside that boys' club wanted to provide that information. So that's why this Records Act came up, because people like Clinton, you know, sock drawer and all this other stuff. I think the Monica Lewinsky dress and classified documents were probably side by side at one point. I don't know that, maybe, just saying. But and they didn't see that. So I'm trying to illustrate here using some imagery that will wake people up to the fact that presidents determine 100% what they want to keep as personal and what they want to keep that is or it can be shared as official. Now, with that said, regarding classification issues, that is an executive branch exclusive issue. It's Article 2 issue. So the president on his own, by himself, is the ultimate and only original classifying authority. He can either classify or declassify anything, and that's undisputed.
And so, just so our listeners understand, and I went through this on my radio show this past week, because a lot of listeners are like, well, why do you say he has the authority to declassify? And I went through the Supreme Court decisions and the federal regs. But here's the thing our listeners need to hear. There is no protocol or process. It's whatever he says. He could blink at it like I dream of Genie, and his decree is declassified.
And the reason why is, assuming for a moment that the president is sitting down with another head of state of another country, and he gets a piece of information that this person needs to have access to immediately. The president can unilaterally make that decision and hand that over. Otherwise, it creates a situation, right, in which somebody else is determining what the president can see or do with that information. And that flies in the face of 240 years of executive branch power. I'm sorry, Tony, go ahead.
No, I mean, that helps illustrate it. So people have to understand, Jerry, in the real world, real things happen. So
Yes.
When the president's in a meeting, for example, he could say or do anything he wants with information. Now, we spies do similar things where I could be in a meeting with an asset, and you're talking to someone, and this is where the president, there's a parallel here. Just follow my logic.
Sure.
You're sitting there with someone who you're trying to basically kind of play poker with no cards. Reagan was great at this, and Reagan could say or do anything. In some cases, even give up classified information if he thought that would benefit him to get something back. We do the same thing. As an active case officer, you go into a meeting with a foreign asset and you tell them what you want to know. Well, that's classified because it's things we don't know. So you can, as a president, you can go in there with complete authority and say whatever you need to get that person to give you back information. And this happened during Reykjavik with Gorbachev. Gorbachev just passed a few days ago.
Right.
I was told great stories about Reagan kind of dangling things in front of the Russians to get them to say something and get them to give up stuff. So that's why the president has the ultimate and only authority on this. So I get tired of everybody talking about, well, he didn't follow the process. Like you said, there's no process to follow.
What process, right?
It's all this complete nonsense.
Tony, let me ask you this. I'm sorry, Andrew.
Go ahead.
I want to ask a question too, but only because I spent 3 hours on my radio show talking about this just 3 days ago, and it's so frustrating. The massive amounts of confusion and cross information. So as I'm on the air, so the Sunday talk shows are beginning to advertise what's coming up in the next hour, whatever it might be. And all of them were talking about how the experts are doing risk assessments on the material held illegally at Mar-A-Lago. And I'm saying to myself, I'm on the radio, I'm like, risk assessments? What are they talking about? A, the president can declassify. B, he's allowed access to this information. So what is it? Are there
and time out for a second. And C, there are legitimate questions as to whether or not the president was accessing this information while he was at Mar-a-Lago, right? So this idea that somehow this information was going to be used to harm somebody is a fugazi. It's a vapor.
Tony, you know this, right?
Yeah.
To Andrew's point, everyone's talking about, members of Congress are saying that people died because Donald Trump had classified information at his Florida home. Elected officials, ostensibly serious people, are making these wild claims. So my question is, where do we go? Where do our listeners go to get information that's accurate?
This is one of the things drives me nuts about your business. No offense to you guys. You guys.
No, it's all right.
No, people just pick up and run with stuff all the time. Like remember that the great old days when they were talking about nuclear codes?
Yes.
Where'd that come from? See, this is where we didn't have an order.
What happened? We don't care about that anymore.
Happened? So that's what I'm talking about. So let me answer this in two parts because I want to answer a specific question, but I want to take a step back and look at like this whole mess. The issue of how information is generated, put into, as you point out, into the lexicon of the debate, and then produced prodigiously all over the place by all these outlets, and then it goes away. Oh, did we say nuclear codes? We meant Eleanor Roosevelt's hat sign. How did we get that right? But they do that all the time, and this is where they're never held accountable. So there needs to be an organization. And MRC and some others kind of do it, but they don't get into this guy on this date said this. This is where it went, and track it all together so you can give a format to people to say, look, that senator over there, he's a knucklehead because he's believing something that we already proved is wrong. And that would
you mean like when the president continues to say that people can't own cannons and couldn't own cannons at the time of the revolution?
So let me point just a little aside. I know people who own cannons right now, and you and I could have we could have machine guns if we wanted.
Tony, I know a guy.
Get a Class 3 license.
I know a guy in Jersey. Oh, true story. Yeah. Tony Imperiali. He owned a tank.
Yes,
he had a tank.
I know. So and then he forgets about privateers and the whole thing. By the way, privateers and letters of marque still exist. You could do that. You could issue.
Tony, was it you who suggested, or no? There was a general who was on the radio with me and suggested that that's how we deal with cyber criminals. Was that we grant letters of marque? I think
it's a great idea.
I agree.
It still exists. Yeah. Look, it worked in the Civil War. It worked during the Revolutionary War. they do give you a lot of legal latitude and run around. Just saying they're a legal viable document to this.
Don't want to get too far afield on this because it gets into what you're talking about here, and this gets into one of the questions that I have, because I want to ask this question before I start pontificating about it. Because as Jerry said, one of the things he's going to be charged with if he gets indicted is obstruction.
Yeah.
Then there is a part of this law, or this series of laws, about how you properly store this information. And a lot of folks are saying, well, the Secret Service is there. And I'm thinking, well, that's not quite what we're talking about here. I know people who've worked in SCIFs. I know people who've handled documents in SCIFs, and that's a secure compartmentalized intelligence facility. That's what SCIF means. And presumably there is this idea, and one of the arguments that I think is going to be advanced is that if the president was going to hold on to this material, then he needed a SCIF at Mar-a-Lago. Talk to me about this, or am I just overthinking?
So he did have a SCIF at Mar-a-Lago, and because during the time he was president, he would have to go down there and have people communicate with him at the top secret, the TSSCI and beyond level. So he has one. So that's not even the issue. The issue is they're saying it was strewn all over the place. That staged photo.
Yes.
So going back to complete Jerry's answer and linking it to your answer.
Uh-oh, Jerry.
Wrap them in a nice little package, throw them out. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. No, I have a glitch once in a while, doesn't it?
No worries.
Anyway, so as I say, they package this in nice little packages, so so that you get just, it's like a little dog you toss some treats to, and you got no offense.
Sure.
Your media just kind of run off and chase.
Absolutely.
And so he did have a SCIF. It did. I know for a fact he had a SCIF, and that probably, I'm pretty sure I know from advising Trump and his folks, he never looks at the stuff. It wouldn't have been out. It would have been all stored away. So that picture you see of all that stuff, it would have never happened.
Yeah.
Trump may ask someone to read something for him and summarize it. He would not be like, show me all about the Benjamin Stone, all the documents, all over, taking like a bath in documents. It's fiction. But that's the point. They're trying right now to get this all into the lexicon and into the debate, so that we are debating, well, what does this mean if he's indicted for this? And regarding handling of classified information. All right, let me just give you a couple examples.
Please.
At the top, I ran some very sophisticated, highly classified operations, and you move information in and out of SCIF all the time. I would run around by myself with the top secret documents and providing them to different organizations for their review. You move these things in and out of SCIFs all the time. So are you somehow doing something illegal when it's outside the SCIF? No, it's just outside the SCIF. And regarding that control, nobody saw it. This goes back to this whole damage assessment. That's nonsense. That's another distraction.
Yeah. Because
this information was not released to the public or a foreign source. And there's no evidence. Let me be very clear on this. There's no evidence Trump shared it with anybody. Nobody. Zero. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
And yet you see this kind of immense effort to say, oh, we need Hillary Clinton's top secret information on her bathroom server. That was given to at least 3 foreign powers. That needs to be looked at regarding loss, because that's where you do a damage assessment, because that was lost. This Donald Trump stuff is complete balderdash. He did nothing wrong, because information comes in and out of SCIFs all the time. It's used for specific purposes. And heck, I find stuff like the other day I was doing something, and one of my uniforms with one of my aliases, because I was, I deployed in different names. I was like, oh, I forgot to remove that.
Yeah.
Technically, that was at the time.
Tony. I don't know if you want to admit that on the show. Sorry, Jerry.
Tony, let me ask you this, because here's my frustration.
Yeah.
And that is, you'll get once every 10 days a well-argued, sourced editorial at the Wall Street Journal.
Right.
You'll have to read 5 or 6 pieces at National Review and then find bits and pieces of good information. Elected officials, conservative leaders, thought leaders, there isn't anyone. Where's Kevin McCarthy? Where are where are serious Republicans? Again, not necessarily defending the president, President Trump. My fear is this, and it's always been the same, and that is if they can do this to Donald Trump, if they can do this to a former president, what chance do I have?
Exactly.
And that should be the message of a united message from the right, that this is not about Donald Trump broke your mind. This is not about Donald Trump. This is about a weaponized DOJ, a rogue FBI. This is about taking laws and misapplying them. It's about threatening speech. It's about cancel culture. This is dangerous. This is fact. This is the birth, the birth pangs of fascism.
Right.
Again, I sound like a nut, but
no, you don't. I mean, look, if you just listen to Joe Biden, basically saying that anybody who defends the Second Amendment is going to have to take on the government with F-15s.
I know we talk.
That's fascism. That's pure fascism. This whole idea of moving wealth around. Last time I checked, moving wealth distribution, that's Russian. That's Soviet. That's a Soviet principle. And then obviously saying that anybody who supports MAGA is basically a
threat to democracy.
Threat to democracy.
The White House said this week that MAGA voters are a threat to democracy. Yeah. And Andrew had said earlier in this program, they actually named Republican elected officials as threats to democracy,
including Ron DeSantis, who may very well be, if Donald Trump isn't the nominee, may very well be the nominee in 2020.
Right, and Ron's great. So and you get Jean-Luc Marie, whatever her name is, up there doubling down.
Yeah.
So is she related to Jean-Luc Picard, by the way? I'm just asking.
One could only hope.
I don't.
One could only hope.
I don't know. Anyway, but back to the topic of issue of it's fascism, and so fascism by proxy. How about that? Let's put that in there as a new term we can use for Joe Biden. No, it's very clear that this whole process is designed to show that they can do this to anybody. And Jerry, to your point, why are the Republicans accepting it? Because they always accept it. Someone asked me the other day, why are they getting away with this? Because Republicans never stop. They never stay. This is the line. Speaking of John Luke, this is the line. We go no further. This is the line we stop at and go after them. And they never do that. Part of this is because people like Cheney, people like McCarthy have always been very happy and very well rewarded for being kind of the controlled opposition. That's like,
you're absolutely, you're right. And you might be, Tony and Andrew, old enough to remember, what was his name? Was it Minority Leader Michael? Bob Michael back in the 80s. I was acquainted with him. He was a lovely man. And I met with him for the first time at the DNC, at the Democratic National Committee Club. He was over there playing piano, and Nick Rahal, who's was Democratic congressman, a good guy, pro-life Democrat from West Virginia, invited me for dinner. And who's there? Bob Michael, the Republican opposition. But my point is that Kevin McCarthy is in the Bob Michael mode.
I think so.
And the thing is, he doesn't fool me now. I remember Kevin McCarthy from 10 years ago when he really was disinterested in ideas and big ideas especially. And you're right about this, but again, Andrew, correct me. I don't want to be curmudgeon Jerry today.
Please.
But I mean, but we're doomed. I mean, we're bloody doomed.
Go ahead, Tony.
I'm sorry. I'm despairing.
I look at this. I look at this because I'm a retired special agent. I did counterintelligence stuff first before I became a case officer. I did espionage investigations for the Army, actually up in New York. I cut my teeth out of the New York City resident office and did espionage investigations. So as a sworn special agent, you're supposed to basically follow the facts. Now, I think the FBI has completely negated its role as the ultimate authority in any of this. And remember, they are now the tip of the spear for the left. They are. I mean, let's just be real.
Which is ironic given the way that the FBI dealt with the left in the 60s. But
exactly.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Exactly. Talk about a strange set of bedfellows. But to Jerry's point, Jerry, our leadership, the Republican or conservative, I wouldn't even say it was conservative. It's just people who actually want accountability.
Yeah.
Because I know Tulsi Gabbard's
Sure.
kind of joined.
Of course, yeah, right. You're right.
So those who just basically want rule of law and accountability are in danger, because anybody who basically challenges that, because they're going to come after you and they're going to do things to undermine your credibility. Heck, you guys have followed me for a while. Able Danger, when I did the Able Danger things,
Sure.
you know, my first disclosure, I'm over at Kurt Weldon's office doing my initial protective disclosure. And as soon as the media got it, oh, he's having an affair with someone on Weldon's staff. It's like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, they will do this. This is not
Right.
new. This is not new. They do this as a routine. So, and they will do that, and then they will come after you to try to discredit you and take your clearance. And my testimony is still out there when I talked about what they use to get my clearance. This is not new, and all this is not new. It's just being refined for purposes of whoever's in charge. I would argue this hybrid of the government, big corporations, especially big tech, and the Democrat Party. It's a very evil trifecta.
Yeah, and the thing is that what is scary, or scarier, is that they're doing it in plain sight.
Right.
Right.
I
Jerry,
mean, it used to be they tried to hide some of this stuff, obfuscate, hide, play spy in terms of how they're
going after KT McFarland in the way that they did, and putting her life through the ringer the way that they did.
Of course.
Jim Comey going at the 92nd Street Y and openly admitting, yeah, we took advantage of the chaos of the White House in 2017 to send over a couple of guys to completely upend Mike Flynn's life. And Jerry, it's hard to not be discouraged and worried about the future when you do have the president openly suggesting that that we have F-15s. So it doesn't, we don't understand why you want to cling to your assault rifles.
And again, someone, one of the legal analysts over at Heritage, tweeted a series of tweets, and she made this very good point. She said, well, in theory, Mr. President, it's not just one guy with an AR-15. It would be hundreds of thousands of guys with AR-15s. And then also, in theory, National Guard troops who have F-15s. I mean, not to sound crazy.
No, I mean, look, I think you guys ought to watch an old series called Jericho just to get a sense of what would happen. There's a series that
I remember this.
Yeah, and everything we talked about happens. Just saying. So to this point, let me break this down a little bit, because this is something we do a lot of Second Amendment stuff, as you know. So first off, do you all know where the AR-15 came from? It was designed by the guy who designed it as a civilian weapon. As a matter of fact, he had to beg Curtis LeMay at SAC to buy it hey, we want to give this to your air policeman to guard your Air Force bases. That's where it came from. It's a civilian weapon.
Yeah.
And you know where the term assault weapon comes from?
No.
Well, that's the was the Germans.
Sturmgewehr, which is so Hitler himself came up with this. This is the STG-44.
Yes.
So how is it our side doesn't call out every time they say this? Like, I cannot believe you're using a term Adolf Hitler personally came up with. Call them out, because they do this all the time. It's like, you talk about this stuff like, and of course, nobody can define. I've been in combat multiple times, shot people. I have never once used a Sturmgewehr or an assault weapon. We have pistols, we have automatic weapons, we have rifles. That's it. So it's all this. And the other thing, we give up the battlefield. We use their lexicon. That's why I'm saying we need to call out their lexicon.
You know what? That's a good point. And it used to be when I first got involved in ideas and think tanks and politics, it was at the Manhattan Institute and some other places, and there was a big push early on back in the 90s that we had to retake the language.
Yes,
and we were making good arguments, but using their terms. And there had to be this redefinition or a back to basics when it came to language. But again, I say this to Andrew all the time, the left is so well organized and integrated and funded. Our side is all over the place.
There's about it all the time.
No coordination.
We have people who are rich, but they don't actually fund anything that's effective. And and I think that's by purpose. Just saying. So.
Let's shift gears a little bit here, because you touched on this. Given your background in both intelligence and counterintelligence, and what we've now learned in the last couple of weeks about the interplay between the folks who did the Russia investigation and who were involved in Mar-a-Lago, this FBI agent who was escorted, DOJ official who was escorted out of the DOJ. This is serious stuff. It's serious stuff insofar as the politicization of the DOJ's counterintelligence division, the FBI's counterintelligence division, but it's also about the fact that if they're focused so on this, stuff gets missed. I don't know, like a member of Congress sleeping with an agent of the Chinese government, and talk a little bit about that, about the problems there.
Well, let me break down because I have a direct knowledge in a lot of this. So the issue relating to the viability of intelligence, let's just use intelligence as a predicate. Intelligence information is not emotional. It's not left or right. It's just fact. It is what it is. And this is what's been lost to the FBI and DOJ. Facts don't matter. So the moment you lose the interest in maintaining what is factually correct, and I'm sorry, I dispute Merrick Garland. Oh, we speak, and very logical, legal. It's like, no, you don't. It's all emotional. It's all now emotion. It's based on the emotions of the left. And we have to get that back, because one of the things that happened, you guys remember the Hunter Biden hard drive showing up.
100%.
I don't know if I told you the story. I know the guy who brought it to the FBI, a guy named Colonel Ron Scott. Colonel Scott and I worked a black operation regarding loose nukes. That's about all I can say about it. But not that none got loose.
It was a movie with George Clooney and Nicole Kidman. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. It was almost that fun. But I digress. Anywho, back to the topic of this. And so Ron calls me, says, "Look, my cousin, my nephew JP Mac has got this Hunter Biden hard drive," and so he spends a month letting me go through and vet everything. So I'm, and this is the same time, if you guys remember, that those 44 national security experts come out to say it's, and then so I go on and say, I've got direct knowledge of this and it's real. I get shut down on Twitter. I get shut down on Facebook.
Right.
I go in and try to get our side to pay attention. I don't want to get them in trouble, but we went into one of the big organizations that does the real work to get to the bottom of stuff. They wouldn't touch it. They wouldn't touch it. So our own side wouldn't touch it. And I've got people in the room from a 3-letter agency that wanted to get a copy. They couldn't touch it because they felt, like we all know now, that Hunter Biden was compromised. So there was a concerted effort by someone behind the scenes to stop it, to just put the Iron Curtain down. Now, last time I checked, I've got my retirement bio on the wall. I've got 30.5 years of doing intelligence stuff, and I knew the people directly involved, yet somehow I was not allowed to do my work to assess and present information saying, Hunter Biden hard drive is real and it's completely compromised.
Wow.
Because DOJ was behind the scenes doing everything they could to the man behind the curtain stuff to stop it. That to me is beyond election interference. That is treason, because essentially what you're doing is you're covering up ultimately for foreign sources, in this case, Ukraine and China, who were actually compromising officials of the U.S. government. I don't know how I don't know how to put a smiley face on.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because this gets into what we've talked about. We talked about Hillary Clinton and what happened with the State Department and senior State Department officials consulting for entities that had business with the State Department. And people ask the question, why is this so serious about Hunter Biden? What's the relevance? And it gets down to the American people have a right to know whether or not the office of the vice president is being used and abused.
Well,
talk about
you guys from Baltimore remember a guy named Spiro Agnew, right?
Sure.
I mean, this makes Spiro Agnew's getting paid off as mayor of Baltimore and as the state governor look like the Girl Scouts dropping off cookies for free on his doorstep.
Again, for our listeners, so the Hunter Biden laptop, that story, the New York Post story, broke before November of 2020.
Right.
So here's the question. Again, if I'm a listener, I'm like yelling at the device. Ask this question. Well, why did Bill Barr sit on it?
Well,
right?
I
Who was
have
the
my
head,
issues.
who was the head
I
of
have
the
my
DOJ?
own issues with Bill. I have my own issues with Bill, as you guys
Look,
have probably read. So,
but my point is that the Department of Justice was they were not in the hands of the Obamas or the Bidens.
no,
Uh,
but that's my point, Jerry, is that this was a complete and utter. We're not going to look at this. And again, just for your audience to understand, the FBI had the Hunter Biden hard drive a full year
yes,
before the New York Post broke it. I came into it right before the New York Post story started because, again, the people who were involved had been frustrated by the fact that they'd given to the FBI. I know for a fact Ron had given to the FBI, and that the FBI basically did nothing except go. Once they got it, it was like this thing where the media does a story capture. They'll pay a lot of money to someone who has a story and then make it go away. That's
Sure.
what they basically did here. As soon as they got it, they went about trying to do everything they could to cauterize any knowledge of the information, to include isolating. Ron Scott as a colonel, went to the Air Force Academy, an immensely qualified, amazing patriot. He was basically warned, you say anything, we're going to come after you, because they use the power of the state to suppress any information that goes against the political class in charge. In this case, it was
but that's exactly what's behind my question, and that is, in many instances, it doesn't matter if a Republican's in the White House or a Democrat's in the White House.
Didn't matter in this case,
right? And so there is, we had a dinner recently, and we invited some folks in who are thinking about 2024, and it was an off the record dinner. It was a real clear dinner, a real clear politics dinner off the record. And I'll tell you this, the consensus around the table was that in 2016, because of the Russia collusion backdrop, because of lots of things happening, the Trump administration got off to a slow start. Right. And weren't able to staff aggressively. And that was part of what hurt him later. And also, the Trump administration never made a move to push out the politicos and the ideologues. Right. And around this table, these people smarter than me were saying that's a mistake Republicans can't make in 2024. They have to have an administration in waiting. Right. And then on day one, begin not just fill offices, but they have to push out, begin to push out those who would have at the FBI, at DOJ, and at EPA, you name the agency, that would conspire to keep information from the American people.
So let me put it in a framework I think maybe your audience can help them. So the first thing he has to do, as you said, pick a team. The Reagan White House did this. Basically, they had competent people in charge of bringing in people who, you can't do everything, but you need to get control of what we call centers of gravity. Yeah. Like this position is going to have these things. And then the other thing that Trump never did, and I don't know why, because he's a money guy, he should have got budgetary control of the entire government. He never did. David Stockman, all these other guys who did OMB, he should have got OMB on his side and used it instantly to basically make life a living hell for anybody not doing the policies he put forward. He never did that. Never used the power of the purse, which he has. Anytime Congress does the acquisition of funds, it gives it to the executive branch. It's his money. It's like, dude, use it like it's your money. He never did. And then to the point of like getting control of the bureaucracy, you got to fire people 3 levels down, and you can do it. And I've argued in my own experience in the intelligence community, I would cut the number of people in half and cut the budget by 1/3, and they would work twice as efficiently because there's layers of bureaucracy. Yeah, all these layers are put in there for political purposes. Just say it.
And it's interesting too, if you remember the early criticisms in 2017, when there were moves to fire people, and the New York Times, the Washington Post, and CNN were horrified. Oh, he's doing this to cover up the Russia collusion, but completely within his authority to do so. And again, I wonder sometimes if folks around the president said, "Hey," like for instance, Even William Barr said this recently in a Barry Weiss interview, where he said that Trump should have fired Comey immediately.
Yeah,
and for some reason didn't.
Do you think? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. So
I have some direct knowledge of this. So so when Trump came in, he wanted to play nice. He basically felt I won and I can. So he allowed Rance Priebus and these other knuckleheads to have access, and that was a huge that right there. He lost the war. It's like the moment you give access to the mainstream guys, you're done. And then he had Jared, what's his name? Kushner, who was a train wreck. I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it. There's no way of putting a fine point on this. Kushner was a globalist from day one, and he would always do anything he could to soften Trump's America First thing. So those two together overwhelmed. Steve Bannon was in there trying to do the America First stuff, and you heard what he said about Steve Bannon. Steve's a number of things, but he's not a terrorist.
Yeah.
And I know Steve. So, and I was in the White House one day and I saw the dynamics. I walked by Rance and he looked at me and he thought he saw a ghost because, I'm a disruptor. If I show up, bad things are about to happen. Just saying. I mean, it's like, I'm not the guy you bring in to fix things or let things run normally. And I think that's another reason Steve Bannon got fired, because this happened right before he got fired, because I was going to be asked to do a few things. One of the things I said to Mike Flynn, and this first time I'm talking about this, I said, Mike, when you get in, they're going to have a plan to come after you. Well, Mike didn't believe it. It's like, I'm not have time. I said, no, you got to make time for this because they're going to do it. Some of the team, the Trump team, was just so unable to wrap their mind around the fact that they were going to be targeted, to include Mike.
Right.
I and two other people had this conversation with Mike, and I said, Mike, they're going to come after you, and he wouldn't believe it. Oh no, I'm a Democrat. It doesn't matter what you are.
Yeah,
right.
You're an enemy. You're going in to dismantle the entire infrastructure. So they're going to fight you. So you had Jared Kushner as the inside guy. You had Rance Priebus as the guy who was out there kind of doing the stuff. And then you had this large bureaucracy, which was fighting tooth and nail to not give up anything. So I said to Mike, it's like, you get in there, the first thing you need to do is, I don't care how you do it, put Comey, I said, put Brennan, John Brennan, and Jim Clapper under investigation. He said, for what? It's like, I don't know, just find something. Just do something to get them off their game, because they're gonna use these guys in an offensive way. So the first thing you do as a military guy, first thing you do is disrupt the enemy's plan.
Yeah.
Just get them off their plan. And again, Jerry, they couldn't wrap their mind around the fact that this storm was coming. It's just, it was like a blind spot for them.
And the irony is that we can't wrap our head around this, but this is how the other side operates.
Exactly.
And this is why they win.
And let's, I want to get into the reasons here for a minute, because I don't think we've ever had this discussion. I mean, is it just as simple as the intelligence community saw the writing on the wall and they knew that Donald Trump was going to go in there and he was going to cut budgets and change personnel, and that he was going to hugely disrupt it, and they couldn't have that? Is that why because they went after him first? He didn't go after them first.
Right. So there are immensely qualified, completely neutral, fully patriotic Americans still inside the law enforcement community and the intelligence community. Let me defend them right up front.
Sure.
I still remain a member of law enforcement in Virginia. I work with folks on the counterterrorism side. At DHS, I badmouth DHS all the time, but professionally, I have people I can work with over there.
Sure.
So there are still good people who see what's going on, but don't have a voice, still inside. So let me just defend them right up front. The people in the intelligence community who went after Trump are the same ones who have direct and continuous ties to the Democrat Party. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's what it is.
So it's politics.
So
it's power and politics.
This all started in the 90s when Bill Clinton, wisely, with his wife Hillary, started seating individuals at the GS level. They took Lois Lerner was a political appointee who turned into a GS employee. They converted people from political appointees into normal everyday civil servants, and these folks worked their way through the system. J.B. Gorelick was one of the most horrific people I could ever see, because she materially was a player in the 9/11 attack failures. Just saying, her memo, the Gorelick memo, had the most effect. The separation of intelligence and
that's right. The wall, Al Gore's wall, right? I mean,
insane. I'm just telling you,
Tony, it's so
They-
funny you say that. That, again, in terms of when America should have realized there was a problem, was then.
Yeah.
That and we
Oh,
had
yeah.
a commission. It was plain. It was plain that was the. Look, there's lots of reasons, but if you had to say this is why it happened, that's why it happened.
Real quick, explain the Gorelick memo and how it plays into 9/11, because
So
yeah.
so
You're absolutely right.
some of your audience remembers, and you've covered it extensively. I was one of the folks on the team of Able Danger. Able Danger, just simply put, was a concept drawn up by General Hugh Shelton, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs then, given to Pete Schoonmaker, the commander of Special Operations Command, to put together a merry band of rebels to go out and map and then be prepared to take offensive action against Al Qaeda. And this
Sure.
was done in 1999, 2 years before 9/11. And it was because of the Africa bombings and all these other things that happened.
Yeah.
It's like we need to respond and be
Yeah.
prepared. So as part of that, we started getting indications as part of our data mining. You know, back in those days, guys, just as an aside, data mining didn't exist. We were one of the pioneer organizations to do the data mining. This was actually done with DARPA technology that nobody knew about, put it all together. Anyway, the pattern showed that, oh my God, there's Al Qaeda folks here in the United States. Here, not right
Yeah.
here in the United States. And when we identified 2 of the 3 cells which conducted the 9/11 attacks in 2000. Imagine that. So when that happened, our lawyers said, "Oh, they're here legally. These Arabs, you can't look at them. They've got green cards." Like, that's not in the law. Well, we don't care. So that was the first thing. The lawyers then
Wow.
said, if they're here legally, you can't look at them.
So I'm going to blow up a movie theater, but I bought a ticket.
Yes.
I mean, that's how
I'm
silly
just saying.
and dangerous
So
the
anyway,
reasoning is.
so we didn't stop. So we said, no, this, like your point, is like there's something wrong here. So then I'm working another operation undercover with the FBI, and great. And believe it or not, you can't make this. This is like an episode of 24. I'm actually off doing things in Athens with the FBI, trying to chase another terrorist group. And so the SOCOM comes to me and says, "We can't do this. Can you get it to WFO via your other operational contacts?" Like, sure, absolutely. So I make the arrangements, and get this, Jamie Gorelick and that team cancels the meeting 3 times with the FBI when we try to pass the information from Special Operations Command regarding the fact that you have Al Qaeda cells here, and they're going to probably do something. You better look at this. We were stopped by the Gorelick memo, saying, "Oh, no. This is foreign intelligence. You can't be sharing this with the FBI." Talk about a catch-22.
Sure.
Anyway, so, and then, by the way, Louis Freeh does an editorial in this saying, you know, hey, if I got this information as the director of the FBI, I could have stopped it. This is still out there.
Sure.
So my point is, so what you guys are seeing now existed 20 years ago.
Sure.
And it was all prompted by the Democrat Party. I'll just say it, the Democrat Party made infrastructure investments, and we're not talking about roads.
No.
They invested in putting people, political operatives loyal to the party first over the constitutional oath in the system. So I've always considered Able Danger as the first engagement of the deep state against those who just feel we want to do the right thing. So just saying.
Wow. Well, listen, Tony, I think we ought to leave it there. I want to thank you very much for joining us today. It was great conversation, to say the least. But how do folks find out?
It makes me, I'm sorry, Tony, to interrupt, Andrew.
Yeah.
It makes me want to like get in a bunker and record this and write this and somehow get this into the hands again of everyday America. This is, Tony, everything you're saying. This is my final word. You make something complex conversational.
Yes.
The American people, working Americans, can understand what you're talking about. And in my mind, if Americans are busy, inflation, energy costs, failed public schools, crime in our cities, etc., cultural decay, they're so distracted by just trying to make a better life for their kids,
right,
that they don't have time for this.
And they have that right.
Yes, of course they do. I'm not criticizing them.
I'm just backing you up.
But however, if there was a group, a leader to come, a Reagan type, to make this as plain as you make it, they didn't understand this and understand the urgency. That's
Well,
where our hope is,
so
getting the American people this information.
Yeah, look, I'm mentored by a lot of the old Reagan guys. I mean, God rest his soul. Bud McFarlane, one of my friends and mentors, just passed recently. I love the Reagan guys. I do everything I can to emulate their success. I always believe go with the winner. I was taught a few years ago, you want to be successful, go with how the guys have done it before. And
Well, Tony, I think you should announce your run for president here on the Andrew Jerry Save the World podcast. Think about it, pray about it, and I'll help you raise some money.
Well, before you go, we are launching a Reagan-esque organization called Project Sentinel. As a matter of fact, Andrew is about to ask me about London Center. So London Center is going to create a new element, a new organization called Project Sentinel, which it focuses, Jerry, just like you said, on Reagan-esque, Reagan-based thoughts and benefits. I actually met with one of the President Reagan's former cabinet on this a few days ago. They give me great guidance and support. So we're going to work through this. And just for your audience to understand, nobody here wants to be a revolutionary. As a matter of fact, we want to return to the basic principles that resulted after the American Revolution, what the founding fathers established for us. So that's what our goal is.
Protect what we have and make it better.
Exactly. Nobody wants to fight the government. Everybody wants the government to get the hell out of the way so people can live the American dream. That's what.
Yes, indeed. All right. So when is that launching?
Well, we're debating that, gentlemen. You know how bureaucracy is. I've got a small one I got to deal with. So suffice it to say, we're going to have it launched probably right now. We're in this twilight zone, probably September. Here we are, September already. We're probably going to launch on 1 October. That's the objective. So I'll keep you
whatever we can do here or on our radio programs. You know, I'm an editor over at Real Clear. Whatever we can do to help spread the word, you should let us know.
I'll get it to you guys very soon as soon as we're ready to go. So
sounds good. Listen, take care. Thank you very much for joining us. And now it's time for the bottom line.
The bottom line.
Always good to talk to Tony, Jerry, isn't it? I mean, that was I suppose we could have just ended the show talking to Tony, but I figured we might want to sum up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, sum it up this way, and that is that there is a real deep state. This is not crazy talk. This is not, what is that group everyone's always talking about? QAnon, whatever it's called. This is not nonsense. This is real, and it's happening in greater ways. It's happening in plain sight.
Woody Allen who put it best: just because you're paranoid doesn't mean that they're not after you.
Right.
And when you have here's the cataclysm, right? When you have a government that is all powerful, when you have a situation in which they, as Henry Silverglade says, the average American commits 3 felonies a day, right? Even if it's 3 felonies a month. When stories can get spiked, it's real funny because we didn't talk about this with Tony
but it's worse than that, right? It's worse than a story getting spiked. It's the intelligence community purposefully ignoring relationships and dealings that are harmful to the American interests.
Talking specifically about the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so there was this poll that came out and essentially said that roughly 4 out of 5 Americans, if they knew about the Hunter Biden laptop story, they would have changed their vote. And I did get into a debate.
80%. All the polling on this is that 80% of voters would have reconsidered their vote.
But here's the thing that I came back to, Jerry, is that even if they're massively overstating it, even if it's right, because it was 79%, even if it's not even if it's 7.8%, let's say that it's 1/100th of that.
Yeah.
If less than one, if about 0.79%, so 4/5 of 1% of the electorate change their votes in swing states.
Yeah.
Donald Trump would have been reelected president of the United States. And so that's why it's, as I said back then, little groups of people moving from column A to column B. This is important stuff here. I will tell you that I am much more in the camp of Eeyore-ish Jerry and being very depressed about the state of America than.
Well, I mean, let's end where we started, and that is, you don't have to be a Trump supporter or a Trump critic to understand and get behind the idea of the raid at Mar-A-Lago is so alarming,
Yes.
so unprecedented. The misinformation we're getting from corporate media, the misinformation we're getting from members of Congress and political experts and law experts. I mean, this should make Americans, regardless of your party, this should make you concerned about the power and the potential for abuse of the federal government.
100%, without a doubt. And the only right thing, and the only answer to this is, and not just with regards to the intelligence community, but generally, is you have to rein in the power of the government. The federal government has to, and again, doesn't have to be small enough to drown in a bathtub, or you could drown in a bathtub if you wanted to, as Grover Norquist says, and then had to clarify. But again, reducing the size and scope of that power only helps to benefit individual rights. Jerry, you're on Sunday.
Sunday, the Jerry Rogers Show on WBL.
Yes, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m.?
7 to 10.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. I don't know when I'm doing fill-in work anytime soon. I do have a project that I'm going to be announcing in the next couple of weeks. I'll let you know as soon as I get the go-ahead to announce that. But as always, tell your friends, tell your family members, tell your family members' friends that they should enjoy the show. Andrew and Jerry Save the World. You found it here. By the way, leave reviews, leave comments. We did hit a milestone, another milestone in terms of our downloads. So thank you all for that. Jerry, what do you need people to do?
Oh my goodness. Repent and look for Jesus. Besides that, find the truth, plant your feet, stand firm. God bless.
Have a great week, everybody. Have fun and stay safe.